Hello again. George Freestone back with episode 4 of our baseball journey, which is the saga associated with my wife and my visits to all 30 major league parks, as well as several obsolete parks. And we're going to talk about one of those obsolete or retired parks today in the visit I made in 1988 to the Houston Astrodome. Now, I don't have a jersey or any shirt from the Astros when they played in the National League at the time of this game. You may know that the Astros have since transitioned to the American League, but I do have this jersey, which I picked up in April of 2024 when Carol and myself visited Minute Maid Park, and we'll talk about that way down the road. But today we're going to talk about a game from 1988 when the Astros played in the National League. This was a game that I attended after I had spent a day at work for Air Products at the Pasadena chemical plant. Now, I have worked for Air Products for 40 years, and at that time, the Pasadena plant was part of the Air Products family. That is no longer the case. Air Products sold the chemicals group that was part of Air Products at that time and the Pasadena plant with it. So the best I could do is come up with a cap from the gases side of the business in the Houston area, actually very close to the Astrodome, not far away in LaPorte, Texas. And so I have that cap on today. Now let me start sharing my desktop. Let me call up the presentation and specifically talk about this game in August of 1988. The Astrodome was the first domed stadium in Major League Baseball. Construction began in 1962. It actually opened for play in 1965, and its final season in operation as a major league ballpark was 1999. Now, if you look in the lower right, you'll see the score for that game, which was a bit lopsided. The Giants dominated in the game, had many, many more hits than the Astros. Actually, the Astros only had one hit. So it was a one-hitter and a pitcher's gem to see. And that white box in the lower right is, again, a link in the presentation. If you click on that, you will go to a box score for the game with lots of other stats as well. There were many notable players at this particular time for both the Giants and the Astros. I'll mention a few for the Giants. One, Kevin Mitchell, who, for those of you who, like me, are a Mets fan, will know that Kevin Mitchell played as part of the 1986 world champion New York Mets. The pitcher for the Giants, who threw a one-hitter, was Don Robinson. And so that was quite an accomplishment. On the Astros side, Billy Hatcher played. Terry Puel was playing as well, a Canadian. And the reason I bring him up is at the time of this game, he was batting almost 360, quite an accomplishment. Now, there were 4 Astros pitchers in this particular game, one of which is known to many of the Philly fans in the area close to where I live, Larry Anderson, who was both a pitcher for the Phillies, but then went on to become an announcer for them as well. So the second bullet there, this was an evening out during an Air Products trip to the area. So Air Products got me to Houston. From there, one day we decided while we were working there during the week that we would go take in this particular ball game. Now, I noticed in the history of the Astrodome that early in the season, April of 1965, Lindsey Nelson, who was a very noteworthy Met announcer, actually broadcast the game while hanging over second base from the roof of the Astrodome. Not sure what he did if he needed a bathroom break, but at any rate, it did take place. So, Lindsay, what did you do? Okay, moving on. So San Francisco one hits the Astros, Giants win big. This happened to be the first ballpark I attended where wine was actually on the menu. Now, let me ask you a question. Has there ever been a rainout at the Astrodome? I've asked many individuals that question in person, and many of them have said, well, if you're asking the question, the answer is obviously a yes, and that is the correct answer. But almost all of them suggest that the answer is owing to a hurricane that just prevented anybody from getting to the park, or maybe intense flooding. Well, the actual rainout occurred June 15th, 1976, and both teams fully made it to the Astrodome that time. The issue was none of the umpires could make it. So they were short umpires, so they had nothing they could do to actually carry out the game. Well, so there has been a rainout, and it was in June of 1976. I'm pretty sure that another thing that happened that evening is after the game was called at 5 p.m., they set up tables and fed both teams actually at the Astrodome. Another question. Who knows what has happened to the Astrodome? Well, the short answer is really nothing. If you look at the picture in the upper right, you'll see the Astrodome, that circular building there. And to its upper left, you'll see part of what is Energy Stadium, which is the stadium that was built for the Houston Texans. And so the short answer is, I don't think Houston has found a great use for the Astrodome. It is partially demolished. And I know that during Katrina in 2005, 25,000 displaced folks from New Orleans found their way from the Superdome, I think, to the Astrodome, where they sheltered until they could return to New Orleans. Two final things I'll say about the Astrodome here. Well, first of all, they got great barbecue, and one of the great barbecue restaurants that I read about, I'm not sure I can remember being there, was King's. And so you have a shot of King's there. The other thing that I will tell you, and I have been to this site, but I have not ice skated there. You can go ice skating in Houston. I'm not sure if it's year round or not, but it's inside a mall called the Galleria, which I think is on Westheimer Boulevard. The final thing I'll say about Westheimer is I have visited Houston several times, and I'm pretty sure that on a later trip, when I was on Westheimer, without expanding the width of the road, they just increased the number of lanes, making each lane a little bit more narrow and cozy for the traffic proceeding along. So that's all I have for episode 4. Stay tuned. Thanks for your attention, and we'll be back with episode 5 soon.